What's up, guys? It's Parallax Abstraction, and welcome to PXA Peeks at Serial Cleaner. So, you guys know I am a huge fan of the Hotline Miami games. I think those are some of the most mechanically fun games I've probably ever played, to be honest with you. And well, what if instead of being the guy doing the murdering, you were the guy who got contracted to come clean up the mess afterwards? Yeah, that's basically what this is. So this takes place in a little bit of a different time period as well, as you can see here. This is hella 70s. But yeah, it's an interesting different spin on that formula. This comes to us from a tiny team in Poland called iFunForAll, which sounds like a weird, like, hacky mobile developer. But this game's got some chops, to be sure. But there are definitely some caveats with that. In particular, that you've got to be a fan of old school stealth games to really appreciate this, because that's effectively what we got here. So you play through, there is a story mode in this, and there are a number of what's called story contracts. So each mission has a little bit of a different theme to it, and there's a little bit of exposition in between the different levels. Not a lot of it. There's not a lot of dialogue in this, but it definitely seems like the story's going somewhere. I'm at contract 11. There are 20 contracts in total, and in addition to that, there are a bunch of goofy movie-themed bonus contracts that you unlock by finding bonus items in the different levels. I've only found the one so far. There's also additional clothing you can unlock for your character, purely cosmetic, but some of these are pretty great. I like the. Actually, I'm going to switch to this one. This one looks pretty cool. So yeah, so you can go back to any previous story mission you've played to go for 100% completion if you like. You don't have to, but you certainly can. And as you would expect in a game like this, more and more mechanics have been getting introduced as you go. I'm just going to go back to an old one here, and then I'll jump into a newer one and show you what it involves. So this is the little sort of cutscene thing that happens at the end of the first mission. And it gives you a little. You say, so you're this guy. This takes place in the 70s, obviously, as you can tell. It's very, very 70s. And you're this gentleman who lives with your mom, who is completely oblivious to what you're doing, at least at this point. And there's a little bit of exposition there. You actually are trying to be a pretty good son, but you have a major gambling problem, and you get into debt with some bad people. And you're basically doing these jobs to try to clean up after the murders that they commit, to try to keep yourself afloat, and you're trying to keep all this from your mom at the same time. And you see here, there's a bunch of little additional exposition items that sort of give a little bit of flavor to the world that you can interact with or not if you want in between the missions. You don't have to. There's nothing really tied to these or anything like that, at least not that I've seen so far. And you see, your mom's a really nice lady who really loves you and really has no idea who you are. So you go through these little bits of exposition, and then off you go to your different missions here. So, as I said, this is at its core a stealth game. You can already see that there are these cops running around with vision cones. These cops who, by the way, are probably the dumbest cops in the history of coppery, which is kind of intentional, I think. And you activate what's called cleaner sense here. So I'm playing with an Xbox One controller. This game is also available on the PlayStation 4. You can play with keyboard and mouse if you want. It works okay. So yeah, you hold down the left trigger on the controller and you get what's called cleaner sense. Yes, that's an actual thing. And you can see here what I have to pick up and various places you can hide from the cops. So in most levels, you have to pick up a couple of bodies and a piece of evidence. And in the later levels, there will also be evidence that you have to deal with. Oh, hey, and I found some clothing there. Uh-oh, and a cop saw me there, so I'm already off to a fan-friggin-tastic start. So the cops run a little bit faster than you. Okay, unfortunately I screwed that up because I went on the wrong side of that fence. But the cops can run a little bit faster than you, but they're complete idiots. They will not recognize you unless they either hear you. So as you can see, I've got a little bit of an audio pulse there coming out from around my body. So that can happen from running. It gets a little bigger if you're running with a body. It gets a little bit bigger if you bring out this. Yeah, this is your vacuum. This is how you clean up blood. We'll get to that. No, don't you worry. And in later levels, there's also audio distractions that you can make and that you can also fall victim to, because there are some cops whose entire purpose is just to alert other cops that you're there. Okay, so I pick that up. So you see what you do is you got to pick up the body. The cops will also notice if certain things change. So for example, Oh man, I just missed his vision cone there. So they will notice if a piece of evidence is missing, if a body's been moved, things like that, and they'll come over and investigate. But like most old school stealth games, they'll come over, look at it, go, for a minute, and then be like, oh, I guess it's nothing, and go back to their patrol. So, as I said, these are not exactly stellar top-shelf investigators here. But your goal is to get all the bodies, all the evidence, and all of the blood, if there is any, out of the level, and then make a clean getaway. So sometimes you just have to drop the bodies in the back of your car, as I've been doing here. Some levels have specific environmental places where you can drop them off. And sometimes there's other things beyond that, and there are also levels where you can move elements of the level around. So I'm going to show you how hiding works here. So if a cop sees you, he's active, he's like, huh? And then you run to one of the hiding spots, jump in, and duh. Yeah, even if, so this is how stupid these cops are. Even if they see you jump into the hiding spot directly in front of them, even if they see you do it half a dozen times in a row, doesn't matter. Every time they will always go up to the spot and be like, where'd you go? I don't know. And then they'll disappear. Yeah, seriously. It's, like I said, it's an old school stealth game. And I'm sure this is making some kind of commentary on modern policing, or maybe I'm overthinking it. I don't know. So here we go. There's another little thing here. I'm just going to skip through this, because if you guys want to play this, you can see this if you want. And yeah, that's the idea of it. It's pretty much a stealth game, but the thing is, I have continually referred to this as an old school stealth game, and it very much is in a way that I like, but also don't like, and that a lot of modern players don't like at all. And this is where we come down to the fact that this game is only for a certain type of player, in my opinion. So it's somewhat unforgiving, especially in the later levels. If you get spotted by a cop, and so you can't, so here's the blood here. Yeah, you clean up blood with a vacuum. Don't ask questions. This is how murder worked in the 70s, apparently. So there's no limit to how much you can use the vacuum, and the vacuum does make some noise, though I have to say, especially for a vacuum in the 70s, it's remarkably quiet. I gotta say, having grown up in a house with an old school vacuum, that thing could wake the dead. But hey, well, you know, some realistic sacrifices made for gameplay, right? So you have to pick up not all the blood necessarily. So you see there at the top, there's a percentage meter. So to complete the level, it disappeared. I got to get 2 bodies, 2 pieces of evidence, and 60% of all the blood in the level. There is an achievement for completing a level, getting every single drop of blood. There is also another achievement for getting every drop of blood in every level. That's a real tall order in most cases. You have to play very risky in order to do that. And as you can see how there's just, it's probably hard to see if you're not full screened, but you see how there's a couple of little tiny droplets of blood, almost little tiny dots? Yeah, you want 100%, you got to get all of those. So you have to be very, very methodical in what you do in order to get all those things. So that's something worth paying attention to there. So my goal is to get 60% of the blood, which is low. Most levels, it's higher than that. And I would suspect that there are some later levels that probably require 100%. I mean, really, if you're cleaning up a murder properly, right? I mean, this is the 70s. We didn't really have full-on DNA evidence back then, so probably leaving a little bit behind was viable. If this was a modern-day murder game, well, you'd have to use your vacuum to pick up... Oh, never mind. So, yeah, and you're sort of seeing the idea here. Now, at its core, this sort of shares the Hotline Miami top-down perspective, right? But this is really not an action game. It's, and I say it's a stealth game, and it is, but really, stealth games for the most part are... Okay, here we go. Stealth games are, at their core, puzzle games. They're just puzzle games that revolve around a very specific mechanic, and that's what this is. In order to succeed at this, it's going to require a lot of memorization. You're going to be watching where the cops go, because the cops all have a pattern, right? So you're going to be watching for that pattern. You're going to be watching for where they're going so that you can utilize that. Hide in this boat. Again, I did it right in front of him, but he's like, oh, where did he go? I don't know. Okay. Durr. Yeah. So it's going to revolve a lot around memorizing enemy patterns and utilizing those patterns to your advantage. Now, the stuff in the game, in terms of the locations of the bodies, the evidence in the blood, often moves around. iFunForAll is using a technology in this game that uses what they call real-world data to determine where to place things based on time of day and other factors. You can turn it off. I have it turned on. I mean, stuff gets randomly placed in the levels, but I have no real idea what criteria they're using for that. It's a weirdly described feature. I mean, it's cool. I think it's interesting. And I mean, maybe, as I understand it, you're not phoning home any personal data or anything when you're doing that. It just uses your IP address to find out, you know, what time of day it is and some other stuff that they factor that in with. And they do give the option to turn it off, which is nice. But I don't really understand it. It doesn't make a lot of, I don't really get what they're trying to do with that. But it's kind of cool that it randomizes item placement and things like that. All right, so you see, and there are a lot of items in the world or objects in the world that you can kind of walk through, if you will, or you can walk around because of the nature of the placement and the perspective in 3D. It can be a little hard to tell that sometimes, but that's stuff you can figure out. And at the end of it, you're just memorizing the pattern in order to best min-max the puzzle sequence, which is what these levels effectively are. Some people are going to like that, some people aren't. I am a fan of a lot of old school stealth games like the Thief series, like Splinter Cell. I'm a huge, I've beaten every Splinter Cell game, and I love that series, despite the fact that it frustrates the living crap out of me sometimes, as this does. So, but the thing is, there's going to be a lot of repetition and a lot of frustration. If you're someone who's not patient, which is often me, you are going to get really frustrated with this game, I think. You're going to have to try and retry a level a lot, and a lot of the time you're going to lose because an enemy saw you in a way that you didn't think you were going to after you spent 10 minutes methodically going through and getting everything nearly done. And if you get caught by a cop once, that's it. You get hit, and the whole level starts over again. There's no checkpoints. There's no mid-mission checkpoints, no anything like that. So you get knocked out, and that's it. It's game over. That is going to... A lot of people really like that kind of challenge. A lot of people, especially in this day and age, will find that intensely frustrating. And I can't blame you in either case. Duh. I have been enjoying this, but I have, in my research, part of the reason this game's coming out a little ways after the game released... Oh, I can't hide in that one. Okay, but you see... Damn it! So he lost track of me there. You can... you don't have to hide to outrun a cop that's been aggroed. If you can put some distance between you and them and get around a couple of corners, you can make them lose sight of you. Again, these are the worst cops in the world. It's kind of a wonder that any murders get solved in this world, though. If you follow the exposition in between levels, it kind of looks like they don't really. So you see there's a different body drop you can do. I was able to drop them out a window. There are some other environmental ones later that I won't spoil, but they're pretty funny, actually. I like them a lot. I think it's kind of amusing. Oh, geez. Actually, this level, you have to... Oh, shoot. This level, you actually have to put them out the window. So some levels, you have multiple places that you can take body drops to. You can put them in the back of your car or do something in the environment. But because I'm actually on a different level, I'm not at ground level in this mission, I actually have to send them out the window, which I imagine goes down towards my car, and then after the fact, he loads them in there. So, oh, geez, here we go. So, yeah. So, again, this is an old school stealth game. I can't blame you for the type of person who gets intensely frustrated by stuff. Ah, crap. All right, lost him again. Yoinks. But it's pretty fun in its own way. It is a puzzle game at its core, so if you've got the analytical mind for that, I think you could probably find something to enjoy here. I also really like its production values. This has a sort of papercraft art style, not unlike... something like, Book of Demons, which I covered a while ago. Book of Demons is also made in Poland, so I wonder if iFunForAll maybe comes from elements of that team. So there's another thing I forgot to explain to you. Yeah, if there's a big enough blood pool, you can slide on it and speed yourself up. There's also an achievement for sliding on blood for 45 seconds in one level. Yeah, seriously. But again, it's useful, right? You don't necessarily want to mop up every ounce of blood the second you see it, because you might be able to use that as a good escape vector from the cops. To be honest, probably what you want to do is you want to start mopping up blood at the far end of the level and work your way back, rather than start mopping up things or vacuuming up things as it was pretty early on, because it gives you the means to Ooh, geez. It gives you the means to give yourself a little bit of an easier way to escape these cops. So, yeah, I really like this papercraft art style. It's something not a lot of developers have been doing, but I think it looks really cool. The only problem is, as you can see here, the animations are a little light. It's not easy to tell where a cop is going to turn via how he telegraphs, because you can see there's no transitional animations between different directions. It just snaps between, you know, basically on the 8 axes. It just it snaps between them. So there's not an easy way to telegraph which way a cop is going to turn. And that can be a little frustrating, but again, this is a game largely about pattern memorization, so it's not necessarily required for you in order to figure out. It would just make it a little easier, I think. I think the music in this is absolutely fantastic. It sounds like a 70s cop show. That's exactly the vibe they're going for, right? I think it sounds great. So I'm going to back out here, and I'm going to go to the contract I'm on now if you want to see how complicated things get. Okay, so I'm going to quickly skip through this so as not to spoil more mid-game stuff. But yeah, I'm hot and cold on this game, to be honest with you. I have come to realize that I don't necessarily have the patience for old school platformers, or not platformers, stealth games that I used to have. This video came out way later than I planned. Yeah, so take a look at this. So in this level, we have multiple different kinds of cops. So there are cops in the levels that just stand still and look back and forth, but have a very loud whistle that they will fire off if they see you, which will alert a number of other cops. As you can see, there's a bunch of different items you can move around. You can block cops with this, so it basically impacts their patrol path. So you can do that to create sort of special special pathways for yourself, so that you can focus on an area without a cop actually coming in that space, and to sort of keep them out of there. But usually you have to make sure you do this in a certain way so that they can get out of so that they can sort of get out of your way when you're trying to come back. In addition to that, this level introduced the nervous cops, which are these guys with the black uniforms and the helmets. So not only do they move faster, if these guys get alerted, they actually stay permanently alerted and thus permanently sped up. So you can still avoid them, but if you do, you are basically making things harder on yourself, because you're going to be activating a sort of leveled up version of the enemy, and that you have to live with for the entire rest of the level. And we're only at about the halfway mark, so I can only imagine how much harder this gets going forward. It's going to be quite something. So okay, so let's move this. So you see here, this allows me to move. Oh no! Oh god! Nope, that didn't work out at all. And as you can see here, there is another body drop over there, but there's 2 body drops actually. But we've got 3 bodies, no, 4 bodies, a whole pile of blood, multiple pieces of evidence, and you got to get everything before you can leave, right? And this is, thankfully, this level is only 65% of the blood, but I have had levels that have been 80% plus up to this point as well, so that's something to keep in mind. So it gets very challenging very fast, and you will die in this a lot. You will have to retry levels a lot, unless you're extremely good at this. And you see, even in that case, the nervous cop now, remember there were barrels there last time that I could hide in? Yep, can't do that anymore, because on this run of the level, the barrels aren't there. So things like that is where it gets really, things can get really tricky. All right, so we gotta, oh, nope, you didn't see nothing. See how you can use the levels to your advantage like this. So you gotta wait for him, and around he goes. Ah, bollocks. Yeah, I did it again. So, and as you can see, I mean, this game is violent in the sense that there's murders and blood and stuff, but it's not a graphic game. There's not a lot of, you know, because you can't hit anybody, so you're not actually killing anybody, you're not creating any gore like you would in Hotline Miami, things like that. It's definitely not as intensely, purposely graphic as that is. I want to see what dropping a guy off there does. I bet a train comes by. I just gotta know. Yep, that's pretty much what happens. Okay, that's cool. So, and yeah, every one of those drop points is a different thing, and they're pretty darn amusing, I have to say. So you see there's also shortcuts here, so see where there's that green line, so I can go in here. and it jumps you over. Cops also will not pursue you through these, so you see, if I want to, like, activate this guy, actually, I probably don't want to do it that close because he's going to hit me. All right, so there you go. And we got a whole bunch of blood in here. You can also carry bodies through shortcuts. So I can go through there, and now I'm much closer to the beginning of the level. So if I can avoid these guys, there's another shortcut right there. If I can be very quiet and avoid these guys. Sneak behind him. And there we are. But, of course, there's no body drop up here, but I can go up and around and go over there. So you see, there's a number of different ways you can approach levels. It's not memorization. There is a lot of memorization in the game, but you're not playing it in the sense that every level only has one way to do it, and if you deviate from that path at all, you're boned. There are multiple ways to approach things. You can do the objectives in any order you like, whatever seems more convenient. So there is a lot of variety in that regard. But it is a very old school stealth game, and at its core, a puzzle game, and one that is very unforgiving. This is very hard. It's gotten very hard on me very, very quick. And yeah, though I've been enjoying it, I have reached the points where I have found it intensely frustrating. Kind of like this. The guy just caught me by a tiny little edge there, and I was screwed. And the fact that you could, I could be 90% of the way through the level. I could have completed every objective and just been trying to get out and had everything wrecked because of that. That's going to drive a lot of people freaking nuts, and I can't blame you if it does. So that's something to keep in mind. I really like what they went for with this. I think they nailed the 70s aesthetic. I like the papercraft art. I think this Funkadelic soundtrack is A1. You can buy the soundtrack as well, which I might very well do. And I have been having fun with it, but for me personally, I may finish this, but if I do, it's going to be done in spurts. I'm going to sit down maybe to play it for half an hour at a time, take a stab at a level a few times, get killed a few times and be like, all right, I'm done. And then come back again, finish a level, be like, yeah, and then get to the next one, get killed a few times and be like, okay, I'm done. And just probably keep coming back like that in little bits until I complete it. And that can often be a good way to play games like this. But depending on the type of player you are, you may be able to just sort of dive into the... Whoa, nuts. Okay, there we go. No, you didn't see nothing. So you might be able to dive into this and really put a lot of hours into it and just sort of brute force your way through it. Some people, some different gamer brains, if you will, are good at that. And that's perfectly valid as well. But this is definitely a game with an older school mentality, and that's both good and bad. It's good in the sense that I'm glad to see more games like that being made. It's bad in the sense that it's not going to appeal to everybody, and it's going to require a level of patience that I think a lot of modern players may not have, for reasons that I can understand as well. But something to keep in mind. But I really love the idea. I like games like this, and much as I'm not really a fan of something like Viscera Cleanup Detail, I love this idea of taking an established genre and sort of turning it on its ear, like, hey, what if instead of being the guy who killed people, you had to be the guy that cleaned up after? Because somebody's got to do it, right? I like that. I find that that's sort of defying design convention and ideas a little bit in a kind of goofy way. And that's the thing. This game does not, even though it's about murder and this guy with a big gambling problem, that it really doesn't take itself seriously. I mean, you're cleaning up blood with a vacuum, for crying out loud. You know, the cops are idiots, but the cops are idiots intentionally. Nope. Oh, I almost had a real skill move there. Oh well. But yeah, it doesn't take itself seriously. It knows its premise is kind of dumb, but it's fun as well. And I enjoy that. Yeah, this was a funny one here. The theme of this level is everyone was kung fu fighting. And I'm just going to show you this real quick, because you're not only picking up and throwing away ninjas, the way you dispose of the bodies is pretty great. I'm just going to end on this note. But I have been enjoying this, but it has also frustrated the living crap out of me multiple times. So I'm a little hot and cold on it in that respect. You know, is it worth $15? You feed it to a dragon statue, because of course you do. Is this worth $15? It's going to really depend on the type of player you are. This is not a game designed for mass appeal. It is a game designed for people who are looking for something very particular. But I like games that try to do that, because not enough do in this day and age. Too many games try to appeal to everyone, and this doesn't. But those who are looking for an old school stealth game are definitely going to enjoy what they find here, I think. But yeah, it's not super expensive, and there is a lot of content in it. There's a lot of levels with a lot of different variety, and probably quite a number of hours just based on the sheer amount of repetition you're going to have to do. So that could be good or bad for you, I suppose. But I like what they did here, and I'd like to see this idea expanded out a little more. I'd like to see maybe some better animations, things like that. Hopefully this does well enough that they get another crack at it, because this is one of those games where it's already pretty decent, but you can also see a kernel from which better ideas can be germinated. So hope we can do that out of it. But yeah, that is The Serial Cleaner, developed by iFunForAll and published by Curve Digital in 2017. We're on the PC right now. You can also buy this on the PlayStation 4. Either version plays fine, and yeah, I like it, but know what you're getting into and what kind of player you are before you pick this up, I think. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you liked what you saw here, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. That does help me out a great deal. If you want to watch something else, check out the videos on screen now, and don't forget to follow @PXA Media on Twitter to find out about new stuff first.